Hello, everybody. I'm Richard Sher, and it's time again to square off, and this is the week of the great debate. So let's meet our panel. Talker extraordinaire, Marc Steiner. Yep, Mr. Politics, the amazing Hassan Giordano. Our spiritual leader, Pastor Shannon Wright, and longtime Baltimore talk show superstar, Jimmy Mathis. Welcome to the show. Coming up Tuesday evening, Democrat Kamala Harris squares off against Republican Donald Trump. It will be the very first time the two of them have ever met face to face. Jimmy, what do you think about this debate?
Well, they both have proven track records. Ms. Harris has a proven track record of being under the Biden administration, failed as the border czar. Trump, let's see, ISIS pretty much ceased to exist. Russia was on the sidelines. Bashar al-Assad also stood on the sidelines. We started rebuilding a relationship with our biggest ally, which is Israel. So it should be interesting. Why don't we go ahead and run on our records, and it'll be interesting to see what Ms. Harris has to say.
Marc Steiner, jump on. Good to have you back.
Good to be here. I expect that Kamala Harris will wipe the floor with him because he can't control himself. He's out of control. He doesn't have any kind of turnoff functions. He's rude, sexist, racist, and he'll blow it. And she'll walk all over him. That's what's going to happen Tuesday.
All right. Thank you, Marc. Pastor Wright.
So,
Go ahead.
if this debate is on policy, I don't think Vice President Harris will win. If it is on personality, that's subjective. But in terms of policy, people are looking to see who has the best sound bites, the best policy perspective to be able to help their pockets and to be able to help their families and to be able to make our cities and our communities safer. That's not about personality, that's policy. And we haven't heard much of that from Kamala Harris.
Hassan, Mr. Politics, Giordano.
So I think the debate rules kind of favor former President Trump, given the fact that there's no hot mic, right? Mics are turned off. There's no pre-written notes, and that really hurts Harris, who hasn't been really tested on this level for this. And she's a lawyer, right? And they're used to having these pre-written notes, these pads that they can be able to kind of, as the pastor was saying, go off of some of the policy notes that she may have. So I think it definitely helps Trump in that aspect. The problem is sometimes Trump doesn't know how to behave himself. And I think he's probably going to give out some great one-line zingers that'll help him on national television the next day. But I'm sure he's going to put his foot in his mouth more than one time and probably go after women, which are going to be the largest voting bloc that's going to probably put Harris over the top in November.
Yeah, here's the thing, and the pastor actually nailed this. It comes down to inflation, and you can't spin that, you can't hide it. And women, by the way, for the most part, are the ones that are making the buying decisions within the household. You have businesses right now that are struggling to get by. Go to a grocery store, see what it costs to buy food for a week for a family of four. You can't spin that. And at the end of the day, I'm glad we're talking about the debate. It's fun to have this conversation. Debates don't win or lose elections. If you honestly don't know what you're voting for at this point of the race, you're being somewhat disingenuous. So it's an opportunity to root for their own team. But at the end of the day, it comes down to pocketbook issues. And that has been disastrous over the last several years. You can't spin that. People are legitimately hurting. And I think that's what this election is going to do.
Jimmy, I would not minimize some of the misogynistic and very antagonistic things that this former president says about minorities and women in particular. And I get it. And you're right. You're absolutely correct. Those who are with Trump are with them. Those who are with Harris are with them. It's going to come down to the small percentage of independents and undecideds, which is a very small percentage at this point. And you're right. The debate's not going to matter, but it could, because a woman may be upset about pocketbook issues, but she's more upset when a man gets very offensive and derogatory towards her. And I guarantee that will carry the day when they go in that voting booth more than the price of milk.
But it's not.
Let me say, hold it. Jimmy, stop talking. What I wanted to say was, with the mics being muted when the other person is speaking, Kamala Harris's people wanted the mics open both of times, all the time. That would give her an opportunity to respond to some of President Trump's charges and some of the things that Hassan was talking about. What will happen is he'll talk, knock her in any way he'd like, and then she gets a chance to respond, but they'll never have any interplay. Sort of not the way a debate should be. But anyway, what were you going to say? Who wants to talk?
It's not a debate. Not a debate at all, right? I mean, by definition, a debate is the interaction between the candidates. And again, Hassan, I agree with you. I kind of wish Rick Vats was here. You look at debates. You don't win debates. Your goal is to not lose them, right? You don't want that line that plays in or you're no Jack Kennedy. Whatever that line is, you lose debates. You don't win them. The fact that they're not really debating, I think it actually works in Trump's favor. I think Harris is right. It would be better for her if the mics weren't muted. Who's that really protecting? It makes her look weak, if anything. I think she can go toe-to-toe with Trump. So go ahead, take the gloves off, have a debate, and
Right.
See who's victorious.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm not really sure about that. When you look at the debates in the 2020 cycle, she didn't do so good. I mean, she really didn't. She didn't hold her own. She wasn't able to come back on anything substantive. She didn't do well. She hasn't had any opportunity or need to debate since then. So I'm not convinced that she's going to do well with this debate.
Marc,
You don't-
Look, if you don't think at this moment they aren't preparing her and working on this, having run campaigns before, you sit down and you really work with a candidate before they walk into that room. And they are, I mean, this is nonstop for her right now. She's preparing for this. Trump is going to blow it because something's going to be said. He'll lose it. He'll start making faces. He'll start gesturing, even though he won't be able to talk because his mic will be off, which I think is also a mistake. Because if the mic was on, then he would really blow it. So I think that he's going to show himself to be the buffoon that he is. And people are just going to, it's going to hurt Trump. That's my prediction.
With all due respect, he was the buffoon back in 2016 with 16 people on the stage when he was polling at 0.5% and ripped through all of them. And respectfully, I think you guys are looking too deep into this on how intellectual everybody needs to be. Look at Reagan, right? There you go again.
I didn't say intellectual. I didn't say intellectual.
This does not have to be deep in the weeds. It can be superficial to win a debate and win the minds and hearts of Americans. It's not a complicated thing to do.
Well, the question is going to be also is, will this be the only debate? Will we have another one after September 10th? I think it all depends on who so-called wins and who loses, and will the other one actually give them that opportunity? But I think the American people definitely deserve it. I think without an audience, that also does a disservice to the American people. I think that the audience should be, I'd rather have a town hall styled debate where they are open mics, that we can hear from the citizens of this great country and be able to hear from the candidates without them being rehearsed. But, I'm not the person making the calls.
If you want an audience, let Trump be Trump. The debates back in 2016 were some of the highest rated debates in American history. All right. He brings butts to the seats. So if you want viewers, then you go ahead and you let Trump be Trump. But they're afraid to do that because how'd that work out back in 2016? I'm just saying. I mean, this
is a different moment. Trump is down in the polls. He's having a really difficult time. He cannot control his temper. He cannot control his mouth. He's blowing it across the country. This is a different moment. And
he started with grab him by the okay, that was his opener. I mean, what are you talking about? With all due respect, you're acting like all of a sudden this guy's transformed into somebody that he never was. I'm not saying that I agree with it. I'm not saying it's the decorum of a presidential candidate should be. I'm not. But he, as Popeye said, I am what I am, and it's worked over years.
All right, guys, listen up.
Go ahead.
This will be on ABC and other networks will be carrying it, but ABC will be hosting it with David Muir and Lindsay Davis, and we'll see what happens. We've got a lot more to talk about. You're watching us on squareoff.net, and here's the voice of Square Off, Emmy award-winning, Oscar award-winning, you name it, he's won it.
You left out Grammy. I won the Grammy also.
Grab you?
You know, Richard and I are proud to represent the law firm of Barry Glazer. Barry always goes the extra mile for his clients. Whether it's been a personal injury, medical malpractice, or nursing home neglect, Barry and his staff, that includes an in-house doctor and a nurse, make no apologies for getting top dollar from the insurance companies. His clients are his best advertising. So next time you need a lawyer, give Barry Glazer a call at 410-547-8568. He gets results. Tell him Richard Sher sent you.
Yes,
And for
sir.
and for special occasions, group get-togethers, or just date night, Pappas restaurants and sports bars belong on the top of your list. Enjoy their award-winning crab cake, or as Richard calls it, Richard,
Fab cakes. They
crab
are
cake,
fab cakes.
and
I'm
a great
glad.
selection of steaks, seafood, and other mouth-watering treats. Pappas is Oprah's favorite, and they ship their crab cakes all over the country. 4 locations, including their newest sports bar and restaurant in Bel Air. Pappas food, service, and atmosphere, second to none. Back to you, Rich.
Thank you, Howard. Well, summer's over, schools are open, and the tragic first school shooting happened this past Wednesday in Winder, Georgia, about an hour from Atlanta. Appalachia High School, 14-year-old student Holt Gray opens fire with an assault-style rifle. He shoots and kills 2 fellow students, 2 teachers, one who was a coach, and 2 wounding 9 other people before he surrenders without putting up a fight to 2 armed school resource. Gray is charged with 4 counts of murder. His father, Colin Gray, is 54. He has also been arrested and charged with the shooting, including involuntary manslaughter, second-degree murder, for allowing his son to have the weapon. Shannon, what do you think?
So personally, I think 14 is a little bit young to have a weapon, not to necessarily use a weapon in the proper scope of things and scheme of things with a parent, but to have a weapon is entirely too young. I would like to have thought, well, let me say this. I believe the process of having the father arrested is because you say, you should know your child. You got him the gun and you should know your kid. I get that. But there are times when there are kids that are very good at hiding whatever may be going on in their heads, and parents legitimately do not know what their child is capable of. So I think the child having to stand for what he did, absolutely. The father, I'm not so sure.
See, but here's the problem. I doubt that 14-year-old would have ever registered it within his head to have this gun without the father's permission in the first place, let alone take it to a school. I get what you're saying is it's a father, a parent, an individual cannot know what another individual is going to do. But there are certain things that you put in place to ensure or hope that this never happens. I think it's very irresponsible of the parent to, like you said, at a very young age. We're not talking about, 17, 18, 19. We're talking about 14-year-old who, again, he got this gun before he was 14 and was training this kid probably on how to use this weapon. This is what State's Attorney Bates meant by parental responsibility. Right? You got to be responsible for being a parent and raising your children in such a manner that no, you can't be responsible for every action they take, but you should be responsible for some of the actions that they do take that clearly came from parental guidance went wrong.
Okay, so if they're be moonlighting, and I'm not aware of it, they're not charging him as a juvenile. They're charging the shooter as an adult. You can't have it both ways. And now with the father, the involuntary manslaughter, maybe you can connect those dots. Second-degree murder on 2 counts. Second-degree murder is saying, well, that's 2 of the charges, Hassan, is saying.
Oh, no. They're not going to be able to prove that.
The father intended to kill 2 people. I don't know what happened to the other 2. They evidently don't matter, according to the prosecutor, that the father intended, didn't premeditate it, intended to kill 2 people. This is ridiculous. I'll tell you something. It's a slippery slope, because if you want to start holding parents accountable in this city, and I'm sure your boss, Simon Bates, would agree with this, you got a lot of work to do if we're going to start holding parents accountable for all the bad decisions, okay, that minors are making in this city right now. Now
Well,
you can make
we just held 2 parents responsible for the school shooting in Baltimore City last year, and he was found guilty, and he was put in jail for 5 years without the possibility of parole, with 15 years to back up of 3 years probation if he violates.
That's fine, Hassan, but then you need to charge the shooter as a juvenile. Can't charge him as an adult, saying he's making adult decisions, and then all of a sudden pivot and go, well, he's a minor, he didn't know what he was doing, okay, and it's fruit from the poisonous tree with the parents. You can't have it both ways. So the prosecutor.
Who says we can't have it both ways?
Well,
Because that's not how it works.
My guess is what they're going to do is, my guess is that at some point, they're going to drop the charges back to juvenile court. They're going to prosecute the father for negligence, for allowing him access to the guns.
Well,
That's how I think.
a lot of guns in the house, but they're protected, they're in safes or whatever they are. But this shooter, this kid who is charged with killing and shooting the 2 teachers and the 2 students, was questioned by police at another school, his prior school. This is more than a year ago. Online posts threatening a school shooting, but there wasn't enough evidence for an arrest. So he lived another year to get charged with murder. What? Marc, you're muted. Marc, you're muted. Somebody speak.
No, so
I didn't want to interrupt the conversation, so I muted myself.
Yeah, well, we have no.
for not doing their due diligence. And again, we don't know any of the facts on this, guys. We're pontificating on what we've learned from the media, which, is incredibly reliable. Here's the other thing, guys. Okay, this isn't really a gun issue, and that's why I hate getting into these conversations. Society speaking, I mean, we're going down such a rabbit hole where there is no value for life, and morals are out the window. You look at the violence that's going on at schools all the time. Look at the video that came out of Lock Raven High School just a couple months ago. The fights where the vice principal is being assaulted in the office, and there's no consequences to this. And all of a sudden, we're confused when it elevates from first degree aggravated assault to murder, and we can't figure it out. It's not that complicated at the end of the day. But again,
you can't leave access to guns and automatic weapons out of the picture. It's a symbiotic relationship. Things are falling apart in many ways. I mean, school shootings are up across the country in 2024, over 2023 and over 2022. This is not kind of an odd occurrence, unfortunately. Kids are carrying weapons all the time, and we're losing control of all of it. It was, the idea that everyone should have an automatic weapon, be allowed to shoot whatever they want to. It's BS. I mean, we're setting ourselves up for this kind of madness and this kind of murder.
But it's also
Mr. Politics, hold it. Pastor Wright has something to say.
I think I agree that you can't, you can't do both. You can't charge the young man as an adult and then charge the father as well. That's problematic. I understand, Hassan, what you were saying about the case of Baltimore and here and the parent being convicted. I get that. But there's some broken things that happen before you get to a point where we're having a conversation like this. And somehow we have to figure out how to prevent rather than cure. Because right now, the horse is out the barn. You close the door if you want to, but the horse is gone. So we have to figure out, how do we stop these things from happening? And some of that is proper control of your guns in your house. Absolutely. Some of that is proper parenting. Yep. And some of that is mental health. If you have a child that is in a home with two parents, that picture white picket fence, if you want to go there, guns locked up all the time, but that child is mentally unstable, it doesn't matter what you do. So we have to really be able to prevent on multiple levels, or we're going to continue to have these conversations.
All right. Very good. Go ahead, Hassan. Get your word in.
Now, I'm going to say, look, you can have this case right here opens the door for a lot of different conversations and quote unquote debates to have, not just with gun rights and what we need to do with guns, but also juvenile crime, right? Because we keep seeing this over and over, both very irresponsibly. Many a times the parents have no involvement whatsoever. You have great parents who are trying to do their best to raise their children, but they're still getting these weapons on the streets illegally. They're using it, juvenile crime is up across the board. And when you try to hold them accountable, then you become the bad guy. At some point, we have to get a handle on crime as a whole and juvenile crime, which has really risen, especially when you look at these gaming systems and online and how it perpetuates some of the violence we see in the streets.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back to talk about the Bronze Star and the governor, who is the star in Annapolis.
Thank you, Richard. You know, the way some people drive these days, auto accidents are on the rise. If your car has been in an accident, the insurance companies cannot tell you where to take your car. That's why more and more people are trusting their auto repairs and auto maintenance, leading edge auto body and mechanical repair. They are the best. They really do a great job. They work on all makes and models, and they offer free pickup and delivery anywhere in the Baltimore area. Give them a call at 410-433-6433 or visit them at 5807 Falls Road in the heart of Mountain Washington. They make your car look and run like new again. Baltimore is one of the best diner towns in the country, and the most popular of them all are the Double T diners. TT, totally terrific. For breakfast, lunch, or dinner, the Double T menu offers you so many choices, you're going to want to order everything on the menu. So with locations on Route 40 West, Perry Hall, White Marsh, Annapolis, Pasadena, and the EC Diner in Ellicott City, and Monday nights are lobster nights at By the Docks in Middle River, which is also part of the Double T family. Back to you, Richard.
All right, you got to go see Jeff at Leading Edge Auto Body. It is unbelievable. Your car will look better than it did when you bought it new. Guaranteed. All right. So it's looking as if Maryland Governor Wes Moore has weathered the Bronze Star controversy. His resume included that Moore was awarded the Bronze Star, but he, in fact, has not received it. Lieutenant Mike Benzo, who is a mentor to Governor Moore, had told Moore that he's already been approved for the medal and that he should include this on his resume and on the application. The governor says in retrospect, he should have set the record straight. Moore says it was an honest mistake. And what do you think about that?
Well, the governor probably should have cleaned up his resume. I mean, the first time I'll give him a pass on, he was introduced during multiple debates as winning this award. I also do believe that the Republicans are making a little bit too much out of this. The governor came out, he openly apologized for it. He took credit for it. I'm not saying it's a nothing burger. Arlington is filled with soldiers that would probably have an issue with this. So I'm not minimalizing it, but I'm not sure that this is what the Republicans are focusing on right now with this governor.
And look,
And you have this was 2006 this was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to hold water. I don't think it's going to it's not going to affect his career. It's going to wash away. I don't think this is something. It's up in the air now because it's news. Other than that, I think it's going to dissipate.
But here's the issue. Like, if this was during the campaign 2 years ago, right? Maybe you start to question as a voter, this is a candidate, right? Along with during the campaign, I think it came up in regards to whether or not he was actually from Baltimore, right? And that came up during the campaign. He's governing now. And I think, as you can see by the poll numbers from the Gonzalez poll, he's doing a great job, and almost 70% of Marylanders feel that way. So again, I don't think that this is some disingenuous attempt by the governor to try to pull the wool over the eyes of the voters and citizens of Maryland. It's a hiccup. Like the Baltimore thing was a hiccup. It's not something that's going to make me say, no, I can't trust this guy anymore. It's just
I totally agree. And look, here's the reality. If Governor Hogan, over his 8 years as governor with the approval ratings that he had, did a better job of stacking the bullpen, building the party, sending a message out, having a replacement for his job, reality is Governor Moore may not even be in the governor's mansion right now. But Larry Hogan didn't do that. And I just think that this is real nitpicky on a governor. Look, obviously I'm not a Democrat. Okay, I've met the governor times. I like him. Do I agree with everything he's doing from a policy standpoint? Absolutely not. But I think he's doing a decent job, and I think this is the wrong battle to be fighting right now for the Republicans. I really do.
Shannon, you know that Wes Moore is considered a likely candidate for higher office, including the White House. He's well-liked, he's well-educated, charismatic, and who during this election cycle has gotten a lot of national media attention. And as Hassan was saying, in a just released Gonzalez poll this past week, Moore has a 64% approval rating among Maryland voters, the highest level for a Democratic governor in almost 40 years. Shannon?
You know, those picky little things do add up, and they start to show the nature of a person's character. The picky little thing about whether he actually was from Baltimore, and then the picky little thing about the Bronze Star. It starts to form a pattern. I'll say it again. And those patterns show us more of who you really are. So for me, that's not picky. I need to trust that when you say it, you mean it, and it's true. So for me, that starts to build a little bit distrust and distaste. I understand about the national spotlight and the national intent. And yes, he is very charming and charismatic, but so's the devil. We don't necessarily want to support that. Now, I'm not saying he is that. I'm saying let's not let charismatic be the guide that we look for. I want somebody with substance.
Dr. Steiner, why are you laughing?
If he ran for Senate in Maryland right now, he'd win.
If he was running for right now, he'd win. He would wipe the floor with Trump, and he would wipe the floor with Harris. And I've been saying, Marc, okay, for almost a year now, the Democrats had any cojones, all right, they would have backed this guy back in January. He would have sailed through the convention. They would have jettisoned Biden, which they did anyway. And this wouldn't even be a horse race. And
I don't agree with that. Let me tell you, because he doesn't. And look, I love Wes. I've known him a lot longer, way before he ever got into politics. Great guy, great wife, great family. But he hasn't been in politics. He's been in politics for a hot minute, right? He would have hit that national stage. This issue would have came up. The Baltimore thing would have came up. A lot of other things may have come up that we don't even know about. Like, you get on a national stage, it's a lot different than running for mayor or governor in a state or a city. They're going to bring up a lot. Ask Martin O'Malley. He'll let you know. Very popular in Baltimore and Maryland. Got there, got what, 1% of the vote running for president. I don't think we would have saw the same numbers for Wes Moore nationally that quick. I think he wanted to put some time in governing before he ran for president.
I get it.
Jimmy,
was years in the U.S.
Jimmy, can you hear me? Hassan, Hassan about numbers. And in the few minutes we have, let's talk about the numbers 27 to 20. Baltimore Ravens falling in their season opener to Kansas City Chiefs, and LaMarvelous passed for 273 yards, ran for 122 yards, and with seconds remaining, Lamar passes to Isaiah Likely, which he made an unbelievable catch of that ball, but it's in the back of the end zone. But it's called a touchdown. They looked at it. His little toe had touched the white line. It was out of bounds. Game over. Touchdown taken away. Hassan, you're the one of the Ravens fans here. What do you say?
Look, I'm disappointed by the loss, obviously, but I'm very encouraged by what I saw last night from Lamar, from Zay Flowers, from Isaiah Likely. Look, we have a lot to fix. Don't get it to, I think anybody on the team will tell you that. Anybody watching the game will tell you that. Offensive line, defense didn't look as stellar as we thought, but they showed heart. They were going against the two-time defending Super Bowl champions in Kansas City and came up a milliliter close to going, because they were going for two. They were not going to overtime, and so we would have either won or lost in after that play. So look, it was a great effort. I think we're going to have to get Derrick Henry more involved as the season goes on, and the defense is going to have to step up a lot more if we want to make that push back to facing Kansas City in the AFC Championship game.
It was a great game, and obviously I agree. There's definitely things that need to be tweaked, and it was the first game of the season. But what I was really impressed with was Lamar with just under 2 minutes. They had one timeout. They didn't have the 2-minute warning. He orchestrated end zone to end zone drive. That touchdown, again, inches, they counted it. I also love the fact that Harbaugh, and I've got my issues with Harbaugh over the years, but I love the fact that you got the momentum. He was going to go for 2. He was going for the win. I am surprised, just knowing Ray, with Tucker being wide left, they're not, asking for his head on a stake,
Right.
Oh, I am.
I'm joking.
And it's only the first game.
I'm joking.
Let me ask you guys this, and you, young pastor. He burned 2 timeouts in the third quarter. Didn't understand it. And what were all those penalties? Because a lineman had his tush a half an inch behind, and they kept calling illegal formations. What the heck or hell was that all about?
Well, there's a new rule in the NFL that, and a lot of the players are going to have to get adjusted to this. You cannot be but on the waistline of the center, off the line. A lot of times in the past, they would kind of get cushioned a little bit behind the center, kind of getting ready for the snap. You can't do that anymore. I blame that strictly on Ronnie Stanley and the offensive line coach, because after the first time, they should have told Stanley, get your push right up on the line. I don't care. Be next to the center if you have to. But I mean, come on, 4 times in a row. I also think that it was a little ticky-tack. The refs could have said, look, just move up before they did it. I mean, come on. But it's the Ravens. They like to hate on us.
But I mean, that should have been dealt with in practice.
Yeah.
Ready for the new, be ready for the line. This is what you have to do, or you're going to get called. And it goes back to that as well.
And Harbaugh's face said it all when it was happening. It was like, really? Are we really doing this? Like, yeah, it was.
The only expression Harbaugh has.
Yeah.
What you mean? Shannon,
I understand it was the first game of the season and all, but seems to me some of those issues with rule changes and lines and what can be done and can't would have been handled in preseason and practice and all that kind of stuff. And you've got to be prepared for the mindset. It's not just about the game, the actual rules of the game, but it's the mindset. They were playing their first game away in a place where there's a lot of team support for the other team. So you have to expect that there's going to be some rulings that are questionable. So you have to, again, adopt the prevent rather than cure mentality.
all right. Well, good luck. I think the Ravens are going to do very well the rest of the season.
I think so too.
We'll just have to see what happens. But we'll all be watching next Tuesday, 9 o'clock. The great debate. We'll be discussing it in detail next week. When once again we square off. Marc Steiner, good to have you back.
Good to be here.
Hassan, Pastor Wright, of course, who's always right on Square Off, and for Maryland, and Jimmy Mathis, who refuses to ever speak on Square Off. Have a great enjoy the debate. We'll see you next week at this time. Once again, Square Off. Goodbye, everybody.
See you guys.